Cool. Should we do this? Alrighty. So this is a bit of a experimental thing with the Colorado Mountain Club, just so everyone's aware of it that's on this call. And we're going to try to do this in kind of a short format presentation, but then have a lot of it built around dialogue and actual takeaways for people. And so the reason I kind of sent out that homework was to get people's brains thinking about it. But when we as camp, and my name's Jesse, by the way, I'm the managing director of Camp Technical Adventure Equipment here in the U.S. and also a longtime alpinist. But when we teach our kind of intensive light and fast alpinism clinics, this is always a part of it, is this off the couch fitness piece. And what we do with people when we're interacting with them as we're teaching our clinic is we really, have them tell us about their goals and their dreams and what kind of training they do and everything else. And we send them away very much, or we send them away with all the knowledge they need to be able to develop this concept for themselves. And I really want to try to make that happen on this call for anyone who's able to stick around to do it. And so working off those sheets, we can kind of reverse engineer this thing after we get the slides. And at that point, I'm going to be like, hey, take yourselves off mute and let's start having conversations, because a lot of this actually works really well with group play as well, because different people know different people's backyards and everything else. And so that's kind of going to be the format here, is that we're going to kind of get through the concept, but then we're going to open it up to trying to apply this to ourselves, this off the couch fitness concept. So just so everyone's aware of how this is going to go. And so my presentation right now is not going to be too long. I'm just trying to make sure everyone understands what I'm trying to talk about here. But then we're going to open it up to the Q&A side, and we're really going to try to hone in on how we apply this concept to ourselves. And the concept we're talking about tonight is off the couch fitness. So this is our simple way of saying this is a metric that we use to measure, there we go, to measure what we're capable of at any moment given our standard level of fitness, ability, and experience. So think about it like just my normal life. I get off the couch, I can go do this, I cannot go do that. My off the couch fitness is this, it is not that. Whatever that is requires an additional level of training or anything else. Why is off the couch fitness important? We think this is a kind of overlooked metric in people's kind of training in general and their approach to the mountains. What off the couch fitness can do for people is it tells us what we're capable of, and honestly, more importantly, what we're not capable of at any given time.
Hi, I'm Melon. I'm the
Hello? Who just joined? Cool. Yeah, so we really look at it as like, knowing sort of if your buddy's like, hey, I want to go do this, are you going to partner up with me? Is it a good idea or is it a bad idea? Is it safe? Is it not safe? Are you risking injury? Are you not risking injury? You're kind of off the couch fitness and knowing where you're at any given moment against some kind of baseline is really critical for being able to understand those things. And then it also tells us where we're starting from, so that if we're trying to train to make progress towards something, we do have a baseline and we can track our improvement or our decline. We can understand if we're tired, if we need sleep, if there's some deviations from the normal that are causing, a lack of performance, or if there's something we can do to adjust to get the performance we want. How do we apply off the couch fitness? This is kind of the key question to this whole thing, is that, like I said, after I get through these slides, I really want us to go through like trying to apply it to ourselves. So based on how we're performing against our off the couch metrics, we decide whether specific routes and objectives are a good idea or not right now. And that's kind of the concept of this. And so we think about things like safety. Am I strong enough, and have I been climbing enough or anything else to be safe while I'm doing this? Am I going to enjoy this, or is this going to be is it going to feel like a military slog, and, and potentially risk injury from overuse or something like that because I'm not perfectly well trained right now. And then, like I mentioned before, if we think about it like a baseline, we know how to ratchet up from there. And so one of the things that's really neat about this concept is that if your baseline is right here, but your goal is way up here, you might need to ratchet your baseline to here so that you are capable of training for something way up here. Otherwise, you can risk getting injured while training and defeating the entire purpose of the project. For alpinists, and we are talking about alpinism specifically here because we can definitely apply this concept to any kind of activity, in our lives. But we like to focus on alpinism as the camp brand. And for alpinists, we recommend having both a climbing off the couch metric and cardio. And so climbing would look like off the couch, I can climb. We insert a grade on most kinds of rock because that's what we do in the alpine, is we kind of have to tackle whatever is in front of us at the moment. For the cardio, we actually divvy this one up into a long distance and a short distance because we want to be training intensity, and we also want to be training sort of mountain resilience. And so off the couch, I can finish, a peak name, a path, a loop, whatever and then we insert the number of minutes. And the long distance objective is something that takes more than 1.5 hours. And the short distance is something that takes less than 20 minutes. So you can understand that in less than 20 minutes, you can move at a pretty high intensity. Once you put it beyond 1.5 hours, you start to slow down and have to adjust and pace yourself. And that's kind of the point. So to help move it from theory to practice, I'm going to give what are my own off the couch metrics. And this is just a launching off point for the rest of us. So off the couch, I will be able to lead a 512 sport route within 3 attempts. So even if I haven't been climbing for a month, that's just kind of like the fitness level I like to try to maintain through various types of workouts and anything else. For the longer distance, off the couch, I'll be able to run car to car on Bergen Peak, which is one of my backyard peaks here in Evergreen, from the Buchanan Rec Center parking lot, which is where I tend to park, and back to the car in less than 2 hours. And then off the couch, I live in a neighborhood with dirt roads and steep hills, and I've got a 1.5 mile loop, that starts at my door and ends at my door, and I'll be able to run that in 12 minutes and 30 seconds. Some considerations to think about while we're working through this. So it's clear from my metrics that these are not possible without ongoing training. I don't know too many people who climb 512 like anytime they want without training at all. And so, I have training built into my life routine. And so these are just some of those points of awareness that we have to have. How much training can I have built in my life routine? And that totally affects what our off the couch fitness metric should be, as an example. But, by understanding sort of what I'm trying to accomplish as an off the couch fitness and maintaining that, I know that I'm going to be ready to be able to pursue the kinds of climbing that I want and to be able to go tackle some of the objectives that I want. And I may need to scale them based on where I'm at in my training cycle or life cycle. But, my goal is to climb big, hard alpine routes. And that's kind of the baseline that allows me to stay at a level where I know that if I want to go do that, I'm ready to train for that effectively. As we work to define our own metrics, a few key points about how to put these together that I like to make sure people apply to their metrics so they're not jumping on a treadmill. One is make it measurable. So, I gave some boundaries on how to do these well. I said, sub 20 minutes for the high intensity cardio. I said over 1.5 hours for the long distance. And then I think it's important to kind of focus on a grade not necessarily a specific route for the rock climbing piece. And so all of those things allow you to measure it easily. Make it accessible. So some of the examples I can give in terms of my own off-the-couch fitness metrics is I actually run the Sawtooth Ridge between Bierstadt and Evans a lot. But I did not make that my off-the-couch metric simply because it's not accessible certain times of the year. And it's not quite as easy for me just to, you know, I'm time strapped and everything else. I can go run Bergen Peak. I can zip by the parking on my way home and I can make it happen. Sawtooth Ridge is a little bit more involved even just to get there. And so that's not quite what I would call accessible. And so I like to say that, you know, we should be looking in our own backyards for these objectives so that we can actually do them. Make it technical. One of the things that I don't like is when people are training for mountains on treadmills, as an example. I think it's fine to be in the gym and be doing a lot of muscle work and everything else, but I think alpinism presents its own kind of unique muscle strains and body strains that we need to be constantly training against. And so I think that trail running is better than road running, as an example. I think that climbing on real rock is better than climbing in the gym for this. And so the more technical we can make it, the more we also work on our experience and ability in that realm. And I think it also makes it more enjoyable. And then that brings me to the very last point, which is make it fun. Don't do things that, you know, are boring to you. Do things that are in beautiful places. Do things where you get to breathe mountain air. You know, if you can make them a little higher than 5280, make them a little higher than 5280, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, yeah, now we're at the last slide. So this is the fun part. I'd like everyone to go off mute and start a conversation about how to build our own off-the-couch metrics and spend the rest of the time on that, actually. Because my goal with this is that people walk away with their questions answered on how do I take this off-the-couch fitness concept and make it my own. Are people able to do that? Is that a... So if I stop the share, do I have to stop the screen share to be able to let people off mute?
No, they should be able to unmute themselves.
People can unmute themselves?
Yeah.
Cool.
I just did.
Awesome. Great. Welcome to the conversation. So yeah, we can kind of skin this cat any way you want. I'm definitely down for people to start asking me questions and guide the conversation. Typically what we do when I'm able to do this in person with people is we literally say, my goals are these types of goals in the mountains. And then we reverse engineer what that looks like from what could be a baseline for you to be able to be super performant against those goals with this off-the-couch fitness concept.
Jesse, I've got a question to start us off with. I find that with like time available to schedule, and you know, this is all like time management, so that's part of it. I'm not doing as good of a job as I could, but I always seem to fall into a trend of training for a specific discipline, whether it's like ski season, I want to be backcountry skiing, or I can be cardio training, or if like I've got a couple rock trips coming up in the fall, I'm training rock climbing. But like combining like the cardio with the alpine and maintaining a proficient level at both, I really struggle with that. So do you have any tips or tricks for those of us that are time challenged?
I do, absolutely. And just to give you guys kind of a time challenge comparison, you know, I run a business and I have 3 children, and I feel you. And sorry, Dan, did you turn in your that homework piece?
I did, yeah. I just got the email like middle of the day today, so I sent it to you about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, sadly yours came across blank. Because yeah, it does say your name in the title. I was just going to pull that up and just use it as an example here. So to answer your question, what I do with that, right, is I obviously cannot be rock climbing every day anymore, you know, with that schedule. And yet I want to be able to do hard alpine rock routes. But, you know, things that I can do most days is a quick run. And then if I'm diligent, I can schedule in a longer run. And so one of the things that I do is I focus on muscle work and I focus on cardio, and those two things. And those combined, even if I'm not even if I'm not able to climb, I can maintain a certain level. And so I've got this like personal like alpine CrossFit routine that I do, where I'm hanging towels on bars and using those as my grips, which is constantly kind of working the forearms, and doing a lot of, body work that way. And I'm working a lot on the core. I'm doing a lot of reverse squats off boxes. I'm doing box jumps. And then I'm also going for, trail runs. And what I find is that the power of climbing is kind of always there, right? What I lack is kind of forearm endurance or finger strength or something like that. But those are the types of things where, as a long-time climber and not trying to climb 513 hard and 514 crazy stuff, right? But like trying to climb stuff that your body does a lot of the work and your feet do a lot of the work and the core does a lot of the work, you can kind of get back, the forearm endurance and the finger strength, in a short amount of time. But to really have the core locked in as a constant, I think is something really worthwhile focusing on. And then also just having that cardio base, because the worst thing ever is like, you're going good, and then wall, which is what happens to people who, have experience but don't have time to stay fit. Is like their bodies get into this rhythm and they know about this, but then they hit this wall. Or the minute it starts to get steep, they slow down substantially, as an example. And so the things I focus on to address that is, with my limited time, I'm very focused about what I use it for. And it happens to be high intensity, low rep kind of muscle work. And so after the call, I'm happy to send out some ideas on some of that stuff. But like, you take a box and you do these reverse squats off of them, where you touch your heel to the ground off the box, and then you power back up out of that. You do box jumps, you do squats of various kinds, and you're working all that stability stuff. And if you hold weights while you're doing it, you're also working your core.
Okay.
And I can slam a workout like that out in 35 minutes.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah. And that for me, like in those periods where I'm like on the road a bunch and everything else, like I find that at every hotel and whatever, find a way to make it happen. And it makes all the difference.
What's your scale up look like? Say you've got a trip coming up and you have a date on the calendar. What's the time frame for scaling and focusing back on the climbing specific like muscle groups and movements leading up to that trip? Are you looking at like 4 weeks out, you start to focus on the climbing specific again?
It totally depends on the trip, because like alpinism can be different than rock climbing, can be different than other things. In the past, like for me to scale up meant be outside, in all honesty. I never like went through a specific training regimen where I was like, I am going to climb 513B by that time, right? Now that may have been a goal of mine, right? But it was like a goal that I'm going to accomplish at some point. And I was training towards it, but I wasn't training towards it for a specific time. If it's an actual trip, my goal is to be healthy, happy, well fed, well rested, and all those things before the trip, as opposed to, burning myself through training cycles necessarily. But like, when I used to climb a lot in Alaska, which I used to do a lot of, I did all my training up high on, windy 14ers effectively. And that was more just to be like in the zone, because you can go to Alaska from Denver and really feel out of your element pretty fast. But if you spend time in the elements, you're just kind of like seasoned for it. And when you get there, you don't have as much of a breaking in period and you feel real comfortable. And I think the alpine can be scary, And so one of the main things I try to focus on, with that is to make sure that I've got that fear factor under control, because I've been in it, and I'm used to getting windburn, and I'm used to being in the sun, and I'm used to, having to put sunblock under my nose because my nostrils can burn. Yeah, so being in the environment a little bit before trips for me is honestly one of the most important things.
Okay.
And that is training, because just to get there requires you to do stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah, totally. Can we use somebody's sheet to work on off the couch fitness and what that could look like? Does anyone want to offer theirs up? So the ones that I have are Kaylee's, I'm sorry, Jeff, and I have Kristen's with content in it.
You can do mine if you want.
Who was that? Sorry.
You can do mine if you want. This is Kristen.
Kristen, are you cool with that? Are you cool if I do a screen share?
Yeah, that's fine.
Awesome. Sweet. So let me figure out how to do that quick and I'll do it. I go screen share. Okay. Share. Okay, cool. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Yeah, so short term, you know, we're talking about something we could do this year. Medium term, we're talking about kind of long term, we're talking about a bit of a stretch goal. So this year, Mount Stewart North Ridge in the Cascades, then we've got Chimborazo, and then we've got Denali West Butt, right? And I like your reason on Denali there, by the way. Yeah, and then you want a 6,000 meter, and then yeah, 50 classics. So, all awesome reasons there, and all things that you can, you know, definitely be progressing towards and be 100% capable of doing. So what I like to do is I like to kind of ask the question right away. Do you feel like you could go do the Mount Stewart right now?
I think my rock climbing is probably not there. You know, like I had the same question as Dan. You know, when you're focusing on like ski season, like uphill skinning, like the rock climbing, just I have a huge problem keeping that up as well.
Do you boulder?
Yeah, at the gym. Mm-hmm.
You boulder outside?
No, not really.
Yeah. I actually find that bouldering is a way to stay tuned for rock climbing, because you know it's hard. Generally speaking, like V3 that's a real move on a route, you know. And then you're also kind of having to approach the boulder, climb it, you know, be in rock shoes. That can actually be one thing. But, you know, touching rock for me is pretty important. I find that bouldering can be a pretty casual way to help with that. So like up here in Evergreen, as an example, I've got the Three Sisters, and I boulder there a lot. It's not magnificent bouldering by any means, but it's sharp on the fingers, which is good. I've got circuits where I can take my two boys and they can be playing and bouldering with me a little bit. And I can get a power workout in, and feel like I'm still a rock climber. And I find that to be invaluable. I also find Colorado to be unique because you can climb through the winter outside, and that's all. So yeah, I mean that's probably how I would approach that, is just say, well, I need to climb outside, you know. I'm not going to commit to the full day of, you know, going roped climbing, but I need to be climbing outside. And I'm just going to go bouldering, you know, once every 2 weeks, and, you know, remember what it means to move over rock. It's also why, though, I really prefer to have these, the off the couch long distance metric be something with some kind of like little technical scramble terrain inside of it. And so like when I go do Bergen Peak as an example, I do the French finish, which is like the steep, like that would be the true east facing aspect, because it's just a little more scrambly, you know. And so your feet are just moving on the uneven surfaces and everything else, and remembering how to manage that well and efficiently. So yeah, you're basically saying that, like, yeah, you could go do it, but, you know, is your off the couch rock climbing at the point where you're going to feel both safe and performant, you know, is really the question there. And I would urge you to, well, here's how I'll address that. Do you have an off the couch metric for climbing?
No, I haven't really made one. I would probably just say like be able to lead like 5'9" trad. Be able to lead would probably be my off the couch that I would want to do right now.
Yeah, 5'9" trad though. And what about 5'10" sport out of curiosity?
Yeah, I think that would kind of be pretty similar. Yeah.
Okay. The reason I like to make it sport climbing is because it's just a little bit more casual, and the consequences don't necessarily have to be quite as high. So if we're out of climbing for 3 months and we come back into it, I think we can progress towards that. And we also can make it even more casual in terms of, okay, I'm going to go see what my off the couch is right now. So I need 3 hours to do this. Trad climbing might take, 5 hours to go do that based on where you have to go and whatever else, and so, I think that, it'd be really awesome if you threw a route together or like a small list of routes that you could just kind of use as a metric for this, right? And planned on one day a month, just kind of committing to that off the couch fitness piece, right? And then you're going to know, because if your goal is to be able to, just like me, and I've got specific routes that I metric against easily for my 512. So I use Wet Dream and Clear Creek Canyon as one. And for me, I want to be able to hang the draws like while I'm climbing that. That one's always, it's a little bit pumpy at the top. It's got moves of all styles on it. And I think it's like a really good one to be like, okay, I'm climbing okay right now, or like I've got some work to do to be a climber again for me right now. But at least you'll know, right? And so you basically would know, you would have a better answer to, how is Stuart gonna feel right now? You know what I mean? In terms of that piece of it. That's what I like. And, going into those things eyes wide open is what this is all about. And so if you are behind on sort of the rock climbing off the couch metric, you can still go do the objective. You just need to realize that you're going to be slower, and feeling a little more awkward or whatever, or it's going to feel harder during that portion of the climb. From uphill ski season, though, you might blast up other parts of it. So after short term, I go ahead and leapfrog all the way to long term, right? And there we're talking about gaps. And you could train really hard for the next year and go climb that, no problem. You may even be able to go off the couch and go climb that, no problem. And I guess that's another question mark. Like, do you feel like right now you can get off the couch and go climb the West Butt of Denali or not?
Sorry, what was that you cut out?
Sorry, I said, do you feel like you could go climb the West Butt of Denali now or not?
If I didn't have to pull a sled and a heavy pack.
Yeah, okay. So it's the pack, right?
Yeah, it's the weight and the sled. And, yeah.
But you have been skiing this winter?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And you do a lot of uphill?
Yeah, I would feel fine skiing it and everything. It would just be, I don't have the weight training to pull the heavy pack and the sled as well.
Yeah, totally. And do you know how to train specifically against that?
Yeah, like there's all that uphill athlete programs and everything like that, but it's just like, like just hiking 14ers or doing trail running. It's like you're not doing it with 50 pounds kind of a thing. So
yeah, exactly. So with the off the couch metric piece, right? What you should be doing is you should be taking, if that's the goal, you need to make your off the couch metric in line with that goal. And what you would need to do is you would need to add weight into the scenario, right? And so, yeah, I mean, like training for the new Alpinist and all those, they have awesome, weighted uphill exercises that really do work. Some of them are pretty unenjoyable, like dragging tires and things like that. But the reality is power work, even in a gym, is what the difference is between putting a pack on and not putting a pack on. But I will say the mistake people make is not putting the pack on. And so if you were working against that and you wanted an off the couch fitness metric for it, right? What you would do is basically be like, I'm going to be able to do this power hike with this pack on, in X minutes. And that's absolutely going to train you against that. And then you can always have more than one off the couch metric for like the long distance thing. and you can say, okay, well, I'm going to be able to do the Sawtooth Ridge, you know, from Guanella Pass to Evans and back, you know, wearing a pack that's this heavy. But yeah, I think what people, if that's your drawback, right, and it's super awesome. These conversations are where we get to drag that information out, right? Is you're identifying that the pack is the issue, and the pack is the issue for tons of people, and the pack is the issue for honestly a lot of women because of the difference in frame between men and women, and they get buried under the pack. And they don't make packs that fit well and everything else. Like when I used to guide on Rainier, it was a train wreck trying to put, you know, like marathon running women in 50 liter, 60 liter packs that like stuck, you know, 2.5 feet above their head. It was nuts. And so they were so off balance and everything else. And so, yeah, I think that if you were to say, okay, well, I'm going to take all of this, but I'm going to put a pack on and do it, that's going to fix that problem in a huge way. But even skinning, you know, like when we're training for the Grand Traverse as an example, like we don't train without a pack on. And we do an awful lot of skinning, an awful lot of casual skinning even, where, you know, we don't need to carry anything. But we throw the pack on. We have a pack that's already pre-packed. It's got a puffy, and we wear the helmet too, by the way, for that one. Because like the helmet can be just like, God, I want this off my head, you know, but you're in a race and you're required to wear it. And so we train ourselves to be resilient against that bit of uncomfort, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, where do you live?
Colorado Springs.
Okay, yeah, so you've got access to awesome terrain. And that's
Yeah,
great.
the incline is kind of our local metric.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is an awesome trail. So you've got that one, but actually further up the road there, that ties in is something like Death in the Name or something like that. And it's a trail that's super, super steep.
Yeah, the Inman Trail.
Yeah, that might be it.
Yeah.
And then that ties in over to the incline if you go through that meadow up higher and everything else. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. That one, when I did it, and I've only done that once because I was down there for a family thing. But that I was like, whoa, this is real. And if you throw a pack on and go up that rig, like, because I remember it being dusty, rocky, and all that stuff. So you're constantly like hitting a rock and, you know, sliding back down the hill a little bit, things like that. So it really requires you to focus on traction and everything else too, which makes it technical. Those are the types of things I look for in my specific things, is like add a layer of technicality to it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's a great idea. Yeah, we have plenty of nice, steep, horrible hikes within 10 minutes, so it's nice.
Totally. And then you've also got boulders, and you've got, you know, I mean, you guys have everything. So should be able to make it happen.
Oh yeah, definitely.
If you really want to be trained, just climb more in Garden of the Gods and, you know, be scared, and then you'll be in the right headspace.
That's for true.
Does that help a little bit in terms of thinking about, like, do you feel like you could try to identify some type of rock climbing, one shorter thing, which in all honesty, if it's West-Butted Denali, you know, turn that into intervals. That's the other thing, is like interval training is if your body is still capable of interval training, I'll put it that way. It's the fastest breakthrough you can make in training. And so, are people familiar with what interval training really is? So basically what you do is you go find an incline and you hit that thing hard with intensity. And then you know, rest, repeat, and you get to a point where you're throwing up. And like that type of training though is like, you'll be at the next level within 4 weeks. And that's how you can ratchet the short distance piece. But what you're training there is power. And one of the things that I like to point out in this conversation too is, you know, Steve House wrote, you know, a great book, and training for the new alpinist, but it's like, it's a crazy book because his warm up is something most of us can never even do. I can't do it. But he talks a lot about the science behind power equals endurance. And it's really important to have, your muscles exposed to high levels of strain instead of just repetitive light strain. And so that's specifically why we throw in the short distance piece. So however that looks, it's got to be bursts, or it's got to be like, I'm going to have to run hard to accomplish this. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. Can I move on to somebody else's and try another example? Is Jeff still on the line?
Yeah, I'm here. You can do mine if you want.
Jeff, are you cool with that?
Yeah.
Cool.
Similar, it just leaves out some of the technical rock. I need to try and figure out how to work on endurance, but I live downtown Denver, so I don't have access to much.
Yeah. Yeah, and living in downtown Denver, you've got to focus on that sort of power equals endurance concept. I used to live at 28th and Stout for the longest time. Fortunately, I also drove to the mountains all the time, but because I was young and dumb. But it's interesting on yours. So what's your objective on Denali? Is it West Butt?
Yeah, that would be. I haven't done a lot of research but the main route would be fine.
Yeah, cool. But then you've got Liberty Ridge, right?
That's just add a little more, if I'm going to go up to Rainier, just a little more technical there.
Absolutely, but Liberty Ridge is more technical than the West Buttress of Denali, right?
Yeah.
And so it's always interesting when I see kind of something more technical come before something technical, and usually that's because of elevation or location. But my question looking at your sheet would be, what are the gaps on Liberty Ridge for you? Is it fitness? Is it altitude? Is it or is it the actual potential technical climbing of AI?
Probably more just fitness. As with that would be the main drawback on all three of them.
Yeah.
And practicing the technical.
Yeah, it's just that when people get intimidated by the exposure because they're not practiced in this specific kind of climbing or anything else, or they're not stable on their feet or their crampons or anything else, tons of wasted energy.
Yeah, I don't. And that would be just kind of I'm good with exposure. That would just kind of this progression would, kind of get me to where I wouldn't be worried about anything.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that we talk about with fitness, right, is that it's fitness equals safety as well. The ability to move fast allows you to beat the storm. The ability to feel strong allows you to be confident. All these things, right? And so we really do say that fitness is part of your safety in the mountains, and it's part of your toolbox for staying safe.
So I have a question on what you just said. How do you train for speed? Like, something is within your ability level, you're comfortable doing it, technicalities, altitude, everything, but it just may take you longer than it probably should. And
can you give me an example of something where you want to go faster?
Skinning uphill. I'm persistent. I can get there, right? But it seems to take me longer than others in my group.
Yeah, intervals.
Okay.
Like quite literally intervals.
Okay.
So that's tried and true from road bike racing, training science to everything. What you're lacking is the ability to maintain more of a burst profile in the way you're moving uphill. And so you're able to do the slow grind, right? But you're not able to maintain that slightly higher level that's allowing you to punch it just a little harder with each step.
Yeah. I'm also on a split board too, so.
Well, yeah, that's huge. So yeah, Why don't you switch over to the AT gear and cut out the drag and start whooping everybody up the hill?
Yeah.
That's your main problem, Kaylee. I mean,
Exactly. I mean, you just, yeah.
All right, that's a medium-term goal to get onto an AT setup.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, in all honesty, the interval stuff. So what you have, your muscles are made up of different kinds of fibers actually, and what you need is an excess of muscle fiber material, so that you can exhaust certain parts of it, go to the reserves, and come back to the other exhausted before because it's resting. And there's crazy science behind this. But you need to build a bit more mass, but you have to build the right kind of mass, and it's the kind of mass that can do high intensity for a longer period of time is what you're looking for. And so starting to do some squat work and things like that, but getting to the point where you can increase your reps on squats. So like reverse squats off of a box. If you start out and you're totally awkward on those, which everybody is, and you can get like 2 of them, you know, by touching your butt, you know, real low and then pounding back out of that. If you eventually end up at 6, you're going to move up the hill a lot faster because every one of those steps feels easier.
Okay, good. Sorry, I didn't want to hijack Jeff's.
But yeah, it's a great question, and yeah, that's how you do it. You train power.
Okay, thanks.
So we were talking about Mount Rainier specifically and Liberty Ridge. Where was I going? I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I'm kind of thinking with so I guess the added difficulty of doing Liberty Ridge just kind of get me at a different comfort level, because the elevation wouldn't be as big of a deal there, doing 14ers around here, that it was
Except
just
the fact that there is more vert because you start lower.
yeah. But then you're up at elevation when you're doing this more technical stuff. So then when you advance to a higher elevation, it would be a little more comfortable.
Yeah. So, yeah, here's where I was headed with my question, by the way. I was going to ask you how you're training now.
Mostly running around town, was doing some gym climbing or gym bouldering before the pandemic, but not a lot in the mountains currently,
Do you feel like you're doing anything that is specifically designed to do what we were just talking about in terms of moving uphill faster?
Was doing a fair amount of skinning, and typically would purposely having that heavier pack than needed, but not to the size that would be needed on these bigger climbs.
Do you feel like the pack's going to be a barrier, or do you feel like you're going to be able to?
I think with a little bit of prep, that would be fine.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think for if you were trying to put together off the couch metric stuff, right? What you would want to do is give yourself little stretch goals in every one of the areas. Because basically what you're saying is that you need to be trained to do these things, but you have all the skills, right, to be able to do them.
Yeah.
And so what you need is you need to figure out things that, like, in the city are going to allow you to be able to train some of the mountain resilience, some of the power, some of the stability on the mountain terrain stuff. And so I go back to these weird gym workouts once again, where I say, go into the gym and do these weird reverse squats, do box jumps. Box jumps, I don't know what your knees are like. That's kind of the only problem some people have with them, is when they jump back off the box. But box jumps you can actually do box jumps in 2 ways. One is to just do them double footed, line up, squat your butt down, and then just power up onto the box, right? And you do that from a standing position. And those right there, I mean, those I think train mountain athletes super well, right? Because we're constantly having to go up things that are not like a normal stair level, and we're constantly having to come down things that are not a normal stair level. And so we're having to do these extended squats and rises that is atypical of normal sports. And then another really simple way you can do box jumps, even in a hotel, is go find the staircase and do 1 foot jump ups. And so you get in standing position, you squat your butt down, 1 foot is dangling in the air, and you power out of that one leg, and you jump that leg up 2 to 3 steps. And then, walk down, switch to the other leg, and just start doing reps of that. And that right there, if you can build to a point, right, that you can then translate that into some kind of a loop that you have in Denver, so a run, right, that maybe has a couple staircases in it, or, whatever you can do to make it.
Well, that works. I live in a 12-story building, so we've got plenty of stairs.
Yeah, but just, the arduous nature of running up the same level, the same height of stair over and over isn't what I seek out. You know what I mean? What I seek out is running and then having a staircase in the middle of it, but then having to convert back to running again. And what you can do with these power workouts is you will notice that if you have a 1.5 mile loop that you're running right now in 12 minutes, if you can trim that up back to 11 minutes, not by doing that run over and over, but by training power and then doing that run once a week as a metric, right? You'll find yourself getting faster on that. And that's how you know it's working. Okay.
Do you have a list of the box jumps, the stair jumps, or?
It brings me to need to write those down for everybody. So I have everyone's email address, and I'm going to send that out. This is usually something that I also do in the light fast alpine clinics, and we get to demonstrate them, all the exercises. But I've actually been talking with the CMC, and I'll do a backyard video version of a lot of these. And then everyone has to send their bloopers back in, by the way, to the CMC, because when you do the reverse squats off the box, like, it's hilarious because nobody's good at them the first time they do them or the first 10 times they do them. But once you get in the comfort zone with them, you start realizing that, like, oh my gosh, like, I feel really stable. And you start to translate that stability into some types of your climbing, and you just feel more secure on certain types of, boulder, scrambling and things like that. It's pretty neat. I've always been like very dedicated to specific kinds of form when I'm doing my training. And so even if I'm power hiking uphill, I make a very concerted effort to do a rest step. It's like a weird walk that I have where I can move very quick, but I also lock my knee out with each step just a little bit. And that gives you that one little, bit of rest for each one of those steps, just like mountaineering. Jeff, real quick, if you were to try to identify a few off the couch fitness metrics, the 1.5 hour one would have to be outside of Denver, by the way. Like, you got to go to the hills for that.
Yeah.
The climbing one, for your objectives, that one doesn't need to be as much rock climb, right? In all honesty, what you need to do is you're able to spend time in crampons leading into those trips. Just kind of like how I plan for trips is to just be familiar with what I'm about to get myself into and not have anything feel uncomfortable, right? And then in terms of the short-term one, like I said, what I would do is find one that's got, as variable a terrain as you can find, where you are. But even if you have to drive 15 minutes for this thing, that's not out of the question if you're only doing it once a week or once every 2 weeks. But get into the gym or get makeshift some apparatus around your place, and start training some of this muscle fiber stuff. and then benchmark yourself against that short distance one. And I think you're going to see this weird increase in performance there. It's pretty neat.
That'd be nice.
So the other one I have Kaylee's. Kaylee, are you cool if this gets shared?
Yeah.
Is it still there? Let me see if I can rotate it. There we go. Monkey Ridge, Keeners, Aconcagua. Yeah. So getting back into shape. What does getting back into shape mean?
I just feel like I had a job where I sat a lot all day and I was tired and wasn't really exercising a lot. Ski season was cut short this year. The prime months where I go snow climbing and carry heavy packs, I didn't really have that this year. I started like a little uphill athlete training program a couple of weeks ago to try to get some structure. So I haven't really been doing long distance, even just hikes. So something that's 11 miles is definitely longer than I've been used to. So it's a very short-term goal, and it's something I think I could do now, but like you may just be like a lot more tired than usual after it or during it. So it's not something that I could just do every day.
Right. And the uphill training that you're doing right now, what does that kind of look like? How many days a week are you doing it, and what are some of the exercises?
So it's about 6 days a week. It's only about an hour a day though, and it seems really simple right now. 2 days are like core and strength, like step ups and squats. And then the others are just, jogs or hikes at your aerobic threshold or below. So it's really hard to slow down to keep that heart rate. So right now I don't feel challenged by the activities themselves. It's just the amount of activity you're doing. You're doing something almost every day.
Yeah. Do you feel like six? I was going to ask you. Do you feel like 6 days is a lot?
Right now it feels that way. Maybe it's just a time management thing too.
Do you feel tired?
Not really. Not because of the exercise.
Yeah. So I'm not trying to drag on anything because all exercise is great, right? But if you're doing 6 days a week and you're not tired, that's a little bit of a strange formula when it comes to intensity. Okay. And it means that the stuff is low intensity.
It is. Yeah.
Otherwise you would be tired.
Yeah.
And so I kind of always think about this, like we always have the option walking into the gym as an example, right? We can go get on the treadmill and we can kind of do the same step over and over, right? And we can maintain that for sure for a long period of time because we're kind of in this zone of maintenance there. Or we can go over and we can be doing squats and box jumps and, high intensity things. And there's no way we can maintain that anywhere near as long and everything else. But that's the stuff that leads to the actual breakthroughs. And so I imagine that, when you're saying that you want to be able to move a little bit faster uphill, this uphill course is going to make you feel totally comfortable, but it's not going to make you faster.
Yeah, it's when you're training in heart rate zones, 2 and 1, it just feels like I'm going slower than I know I can if I had to. And so that's probably why it doesn't feel intense to me, but that's like the whole foundation of the training. So I don't know if it's a good training for me or a bad training, but I just want to get back in the groove of working out and just building like a base for me and knowing that I'm capable of, just having more fitness.
Anybody else too who has like similar complications or experience with these types of things too, like jump in, group conversation, right?
So
I don't mean to be the only one like giving answers to any of this stuff, by the way.
So I was
Tammy,
laid
are
up
you
with
doing, like,
injury.
8 months? Sorry, Rachel, go ahead.
I was gonna say I was laid up with injury and sickness for like 6 months, and then just as I was starting to like, I can start working out again, the pandemic hits, so everything shuts down. And then I got sick for a couple of weeks. But so I just came out to Colorado a month ago to a friend's place. I live in Brooklyn, New York most of the time, so my home spot is the Gunks. But I haven't touched a rock wall since I don't know when, let alone outdoors. And having to come back from no fitness whatsoever. And luckily, one of the housemates here, she's also a trail runner. And, you know, we've gone from, I was in Brooklyn, so I was training at home doing something every day, whether it be boot camp from the climbing gyms or yoga or trying to get out for a run. But then coming here and, you know, I'm in Superior, just outside of Boulder. So I've got these nice trails just outside. And so we can walk up the hill and go running for 3-4 miles. And I don't have the altitude fitness right now. Everyone else does because they've been here a while.
Yeah.
So we're having to stop and everyone's fine with it. So it's just a case of find what, to your point earlier, Jesse, find what's fun. And being out in the trails, running in South Mesa or just up the road at Colton, like, great, absolutely fabulous. And it's just building that back up. And I'm still doing strength training for runners once or twice a week. I'm still doing some climbing strength training, but I know I have no arm strength. I know I have no shoulder strength and hand strength right now.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to work out how to fix that. And then also, because this isn't my local hood, who I can start getting out and run with as well.
Yeah, totally. One point on altitude there, in terms of elevation, and especially coming in. We've always made it, like, if you're in New York, you just put a plastic bag on your head and get on the treadmill, and that's
Pretty much, yeah.
how to make it happen, right? But
Well, I was running with a mask for a few weeks, so, you know, it's a little bit of altitude training.
yeah. What I will say about it is the only way I've ever effectively trained for altitude, by the way, is to be at altitude.
Yeah, completely.
And so I think that people can try to, like, kind of find programs when they're lower to try to make it happen. And there's different masks, not the COVID masks and everything, but like literally masks that are just
Yeah, no, I agree. Just go to the trail or something. Yeah.
But if you can get yourself up 2,000 feet higher than where you're at right now and do your once a week, right? You're going to get better at elevation, you know? And then if you can ratchet that up another 1,000 feet, you're going to get better at elevation. And so that's another one that I wanted to point out based on you saying that is when you're leading up to objectives like the West Butt and things like that, right? It's really important for us to be able to take our off the couch fitness metric and redefine it for that period of time and make sure that it's at altitude, right? So like when I'm climbing, when I was climbing in Alaska a lot, I was cardio running, you know, in Rocky Mountain National Park, and I would go zip up landslide. I'd go to the top of Meeker. I'd come down the loft and do that kind of thing. And then I would also go to Mount Lincoln, and I would zip up the ice fall there, go over to the ridge, you know, that kind of slopes up to the weird shack up there before you start to go up and tag the 14ers. And that thing just gets absolutely pounded with wind. But it's also terrain that you can move fast through. And so I would get up there and I would go do that, but I'd be getting blown down. I'd be getting, you know, knocked down by weather, and I'd be in the elements and exposed. And then the other place that I use a lot, just based on proximity, is St. Mary's Glacier. And, you know, that thing just gets pounded sometimes. And so you go up that in crappy conditions, and you go over and you tab James Peak, and you know, run the tundra a little bit and come back down a different way. And all of those things are literally, you move your training from Bergen Peak as an example, or from Superior, right? And you just move that to a place that simulates the environment that you need to be in. And one of those things that you gotta be in if you're gonna be performant in it with altitude is a place with more altitude.
Yep. For sure.
But to answer your question about arms and core and everything else, I actually find that that's one of the easiest areas to maintain, because we can just use like anything around us, in a lot of ways.
Yep.
So I would, I'll send out some of these exercises, but I would recommend trying to take some of them and try to incorporate them into 35-minute power workouts 2 days a week kind of thing. You know, nothing crazy, but you'll notice a monster difference if you do that.
Yeah, no, it's fun. I was supposed to be doing an expedition with Arc'teryx at the end of July for the Grand Tetons, like a small women's only expedition, but they've just confirmed they cancelled it.
Bummer.
But I'm like, well, okay, so I can still do it.
Yeah, their expedition trip now program is pretty neat.
Yeah, I only found it earlier this year, so I was super excited and super stoked because it was six people plus 2 guides.
Yep. Yeah, they're small format, like real objectives. It's pretty neat.
And you have to fill in this form to explain what you've done previously, what exposure you've done, what guided trips you've done, and you're not allowed to book anything until they tell you your guides have approved you.
Yeah.
So that was kind of fair.
Yeah, it's neat.
You know, but yeah, I need to look around and see what else there is and see how long I can stay in Superior.
So what would you define as off the couch fitness metrics if you wanted to sort of like work against some of the challenges that you've been experiencing as an example?
Right now would be really hard because up until, I don't know, 2 months ago, I was laid up and wasn't able to do stuff. I can still go run a 10K on the trails here in sub an hour. Like I'm back to that again.
Yeah.
I've done triathlons, I've done half Ironman stuff. So getting up to that level again isn't too hard. My climbing fitness is probably, and I've done a bunch of sort of long hikes and non-technical high Alps and things like that. But my main one is endurance, and I burn out so fast, and that's what I have to rebuild. I have to build up my strength for climbing, but then just pure endurance so I can just keep going day after day.
Yeah, so you need to be going up hills too, by the way.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of like trail runs and stuff, which is great, and proper trail runs, so decent elevations, but yeah, I haven't actually thought about what my training plan should look like yet. So this was a kick in the pants for me, which is great.
Yeah, what you should do is you should pick a local simple peak, right? Whatever it is, it can be. I probably wouldn't recommend Bierstadt right now because it's getting super slammed. You know, like take Bergen Peak, even in
Okay.
super accessible to you, but you're in Superior, so.
I've got friends in Evergreen as well, though. So.
Yeah. If you were to do something like that was a longer uphill than the running is, right?
Yeah.
That's where you're going to see a performance gain. And so I would put together an off the couch fitness metric that has a long uphill, like a very long uphill.
You've got Bear Peak and Green Mountain too, right in South Boulder. So just shoot west a little bit and they're right there.
Yeah.
So what was the first one?
Bear Peak.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll get about 2,500 vert.
Nice.
Bear Peak's a great one. Green Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
That's why I like the group conversations, is because people know other people's geography even better than I do, for sure.
I definitely don't have it geography wise here yet.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, one of the ones I used to do a lot when my office room was the first Flatiron as well. You know, and if you can find a partner that you feel like you can move fast on, you know, for that's a pretty neat thing. That's a real asset for people who are near Boulder. I used to do it solo a whole lot, but it was like I was you know, my car to car was fast, but it's technical, obviously, and so you have to, like, you know, be going slow enough to be safe, but you're really climbing, but then you also have to run like hell to keep your speed up, and so the Flatirons are really neat in that way. You know, it doesn't have to be like, how fast can I do this solo? It doesn't matter. It's like, find a good rope partner, you know, and like be proficient and fast, but it's really, really good training because you just feel good on the rock, you know?
yeah, I'm just starting to find a few folks around who are climbers here. So my housemates unfortunately aren't climbers. So yeah, it's like finding some folks who will be willing to go play on some rocks.
Yeah, totally. CMC is a good resource. Yeah, so we were talking more about uphill performance again with the off the couch fitness metrics for Kaylee, and I really believe that yeah, we've got to figure out a way to incorporate power. So if you were to try to define, you know, kind of push the uphill 6 day a week thing to the side just for a minute and just think about the off the couch fitness objectives as I'm going to go do the short one once a week. I'm going to go do the long one once a month kind of thing. And because it's a metric, right? It's not to say you shouldn't be doing those types of objectives more frequently, but that specific one, you know, so that you can kind of understand where you're at against it. And then, you know, in terms of climbing, for some of your objectives that are, you know, honestly less technical as they progress, you know, they're more about the body power and everything else. You know, the climbing is more about just making sure that when you go to Denali, is Denali yours? I'm sorry.
No, I did ACON, so I just kind of want to do some multi-day trips that are non-technical.
Yes.
Last year I did Kilimanjaro because that's like the easiest 7 summit, and so my next one I think would be ACON. So I just kind of want to build up on those.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's kind of, yeah, what I was saying is that, like, you know, you can go rock climb as hard as you want and they don't help you on ACON, I guess is the point, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, think about that climbing one differently than I think about that climbing one, because the objectives are different in that way. And so, you know, think about that from the perspective of, like, how often can I put crampons on my feet, in all honesty, or, you know, whatever is going to be necessary for that. And in all honesty, your routes are more about being really comfortable with messed up rock under good boots or approach shoes. You know what I mean? So make sure that you come up with some training and objectives around talus, in all honesty. You know, like Sawtooth Ridge is a great one as an example. Just kind of moving through that proficiently and fast helps you on those types of objectives a lot.
Do you have any tips for training for balance for that type of loose terrain?
Yep, run it. Mm-hmm. And I say that, you know, like, it sounds funny, but when I was talking about when I was doing my circuits in Rocky Mountain a lot, I left my crampons on, and that's because I work for a climbing gear company and I get to do this. But I'd get to the top of Landslide, leave the crampons on, and run the talus to the top of Meeker, and then I'd pull them off for the descent down the loft and everything else. But I did that because crampons on rock, like, that's the most uncomfortable feeling there is in a lot of ways, right? Like, you just do, I mean, you do not feel like that's a combination that should exist. And you really, for me, it takes a lot of getting used to, I guess is the point. And so, you know, both for crampon testing or lightweight crampons, but also I had the added value of being able to, like, really spend a lot of time being like, if I don't put my foot flat and if my heel doesn't strike while I'm wearing crampons, everything goes wrong. And you start to just, your mindset immediately shifts when you have crampons on your feet, and your walk changes and your stance changes and everything else when you've been in that and done it a lot. And so that's why I say, like, to become better at that, you just have to push your limits on it. And so you got to find talus that isn't too loose and too unsafe and everything else, but you really got to commit to trying to run through it and start to progress to become faster at that stuff. And with that, by the way, your ankles are getting stronger. your knees are getting stronger, all of the stability muscles and everything that's supporting the joints is getting stronger and getting used to that and firing faster to adjust. Your bone density is actually getting denser with some of that impact and everything else. And what you're building at the same time is a lot of, you know, the mountain resilience that is where people hit the wall. You know, they're resilient up to here. They're certainly resilient in mind. They're capable in body, but then all of a sudden it's like, I have shin splints, or all of a sudden, you know, like my ankle just rolled.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, when we're tired, our footwork just goes to hell.
Yep. So one of the things I do in light and fast alpinism is we go outside and I make people run across talus. And then we literally work on running across talus. And for me, like if you want the quick how-to, right? I have size 13 feet and I'm actually lucky for that with talus because I can spread my weight over a bigger platform effectively. But you have got to put your foot flat on things a lot more often. And you have to imagine even when you're not wearing crampons that you're wearing crampons. And so you get this kind of slightly wider, slightly lower stance, but you still move fast. And you take small, deliberate steps, but they're quick and you just move. And work on that.
Okay.
Yep. But with that, you're training all that other stuff at the same time. And so I actually think it's really good training. And that's part of why I say make your off-the-couch fitness metrics and your training as technical as they can be. And part of that technical, which is why we went to the Colorado Springs example of like, let's find a steep, crappy dirt path as opposed to steps, so to speak, or, you know, something with a more continuous grade, because it trains all those things better. Yeah. So do you guys want to try to develop off-the-couch fitness metrics? What I'll say is, if you want to try to take a stab at them and email them over, I'd be super psyched to look at them and be like, this one fits and this one doesn't quite, if you want me to. Just as a starting point, just a launching off point, because this is a really hard concept, right? Because most people, when I present this, they haven't thought about the fact that this should be part of their sort of mountaineering DNA. But it really should be, because we have to have it for other sports, not only have it for alpinism. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds great, Jesse. Thanks.
Absolutely. I hope it's cool and helpful. I will take a stupid video of some of the alpine CrossFit stuff and send it out so that people can see some of the exercises. I have to personally admit that I've let my off-the-couch fitness slide during the pandemic.
It creates this whole inertia thing. I don't know what's been going on. It's like everywhere.
You know, everyone's being forced to spin their wheels around problems they can't solve, and that's exhausting.
While you were talking about it, I do have this. It's been very good as a prop for my laptop for work for the last month.
So what I say about that book is everybody should read it. Don't try to do the warm-up, because you'll literally strain a muscle in your back and not be able to train and climb. Like, it's insane. And spend a lot of time with the section of that book that talks about power equals endurance.
Yeah.
And I think it's incredibly well written and easy to digest. For me, it's the big takeaway for me from that book, and all the other stuff I actually have kind of like chosen to forget. Because you're also talking about, you're reading an author, you know, that has climbed literally the hardest alpine route in the world.
Yeah.
He's the only one who's done it. And so you have to understand sort of where that's coming from. The new alpinism that he's talking about, I mean, he's coming from the RuPaul phase, and that has, you know, killed people and thwarted every one of the best alpinists until him. And so, you know, just know what you're reading there is all I'm saying. But power equals endurance in the writing that Scott, the co-author, does on Scott, right?
Yep, Scott Johnston.
The writing, his contribution to that in terms of the muscle fiber work, incredible.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the, you know, the guys who like the gods of triathlon and all this kind of stuff, they're talking about, and what they talk about is the fact that strength equals power and endurance. It's exactly the same thing.
Yep. Yeah, and Scott is he comes from a Nordic background. Like
yeah.
And so obviously, I mean, yeah, that's the other way to get everything you need for doing Denali is to do Nordic racing, because those guys.
Sure, you know, when we can all fly and travel again, it'd be great.
Yeah. Cool. Any other questions for me? Anyone want to say anything? Or I hope that was cool and awesome and fun and something different during the pandemic.
Thanks for your time, Jesse.
Thanks, Jesse. Very helpful.
I'll reach out also about just climbing and stuff in general, because I'm trying to establish some sort of group that I can like find people with and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I will. I'll make sure that what the CMC resources are for that.
Yeah. That would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. No problem.
Thanks, Jesse. If you can email those workouts, that would be cool to see as well.
Yeah, you know, just be the exercises, but I'll write down sort of what my, you know, what I'm doing with them in a 35 to 50-minute format as well. But progress toward them, because like, as an example, the reason I know about towel hangs is because we were traveling for business in Canada, and we were in Calgary, and a guy who runs a climbing fitness center up there invited me and Glenn, my coworker, to come do a workout. He had us do towel hangs. I swear to God, 8 seconds is what we could do, you know? And we were like, this is impossible. Like this, no, not ever. Like this, you know, you guys are freaks. Within 30 days, well over a minute. And so there's these weird parts of it that I'll also try to explain really fast so that people don't like go, oh, no way, you know? Because I mean, I had the same exact experience when I started them, including some of the squats and like box jumps. Like now I jump a box that's up to my belly button, but I was scared to death of boxes that high when I was starting it, especially when you rack your shin once and like eat it. That's honestly one of the reasons I started working with the one-footed ones, is because I felt like more safe because I could put the other foot down to correct the bobble. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I'll record that. I will send it out, and I guess thanks everyone for doing this. I don't know, for me, it's really important to see people and share the experience, even though we're still not able to do it in person. So nice to see you all. Thanks.
You too. Thanks.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Ciao. Good night.
Thanks so much, Jesse.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you. Yeah, but I will try to send you CMC resources for kind of the networking piece.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's different right now in terms of what they're.
Yeah, so I'm actually one of the volunteer leadership for the AAC Brooklyn chapter that's set up last year. So I've got access into the AAC stuff, but again, they don't actually have a Boulder chapter. They only have a Denver chapter.
They also don't have what the CMC has, to be honest.
No.
So it's all outside of the pandemic. The CMC, what they are is trips. It's basically like a mountaineering focused meetup group with experts, and it's awesome.
It's basically what I want.
And so I sit on the board, and we are looking at how to start putting that back out. You should absolutely be looking for trips to sign up on, because you're going to meet, even if the objective isn't like the best thing ever, right? You're going to meet partners.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what I want, and sort of that's why I'm a bit more than a little bummed that like the trip got cancelled, because then it's like gives me a target to work towards, and And to your point, unless you've got those short, long, medium-term objectives, like you're just climbing for the fun, which is great. And I need to be doing that too. But again, I don't have that network here. They're all back in the gunks.
Totally.
So trying to find them.
Yeah, totally. Well, I'll try to send you the right links for starting that process.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Reemerges out of the pandemic. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, mate. Take care.
Ciao.
Bye.
So we couldn't